All right. Hey, everybody. This is the Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. Today is Saturday, October 20th, 2018. It is currently 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I have no clue what Ed's planning for today, so let's be on the edge of our seats and waiting for him to tell us. Ed, take it away.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. The one thing is, this has been an interesting week again. It is interesting when you've been watching the news around the country. I'm not into the mainstream media, so my news comes from Facebook research, other outlines, YouTube, a whole bunch of other stuff that I deal with, and I'm not on the main grid basically to contribute with that corruption, seeing that they're not telling us the truth. But it's been interesting when you sit there and read all the stuff that's going on, and people are not paying attention to the changes that are going on administratively in our elected and public employees unions. Now, the one thing is that Trump is getting ready to issue another executive order that's going to shock the establishment. Basically, is putting people more into line, and this is the one thing that is so important when you file these criminal charges on these men and women. Okay, people think, well, we're not having our courts, and we know for a fact that our courts haven't been running as our courts because we know that most people have been fighting in administrative court. They're not fighting in an Article 1 court. And further investigation, you see how these corporations, when they incorporated, and now they think that they have rights because they've been instructed by law firms, attorneys, the Vatican. And there's a lot of people now that I've been watching stuff coming out with the Vatican. And so that is the one thing when you sit there and watch the stuff, how the mind control works and how we've been convinced of a lot of things. Well, I mean, just for the last 50 years. And if you grew up in the 70s and 80s and 50s and 60s, the times back then were different. You didn't go to jail. You didn't get assaulted like we are today. And it is disgusting what's going on with our public employees. And so that is the one thing you have to cite their administrative rules. And people go, well, they're copyrighted. You can't do that. And it's like, okay, where do they get the authority? Because if they're representing the people of the people's contracts, and believe me, we do have contracts with them. That's why some of these administrative rules are out there, especially like the 5 FCR. And it's the whole important to read this information that is being out there and provided for you. I mean, that's the one thing is to read this stuff when you start really comprehending how simple we've been convinced of all these crazy things over the years and how we're convinced, really frustrating, with religion because so many people go by religion. Now, when people don't get when they stated to separate church and state, they meant to separate church and state. But back then, when that was brought up, the state was not basically a corporation. That was before the corporations were formed. And I want to bring up a case here, which I'm going to bring up here, dealing with this. Mulberry versus Madison. People are finally getting this stuff and talking about it. And including where the judge even admitted in record he was not going against his constitutional oath to commit fraud. And that's the one thing that people don't get. We do have some honest elected and public servants out there. But we need to start supporting them and get them the information they need to do their service. And we have noticed that there are elected and public employees doing more services than they have before. And so that is the one thing that we are blessed with, that structure that people are waking up. And so when we get this point, we have to sit there and educate the others. That is our responsibility. And people still are fighting that or don't get it. And it is frustrating with us because we go through these turmoils on these stuff. And so when we watch this news media and all this crazy stuff that's going on, and then we're battling with the right to travel, and it's like, so if you have nobody forcing your constitutional rights, or even if you're an immigrant, nobody's forcing your legal immigration, and then they're forcing these domestic terrorists and foreign terrorists in our country for their personal financial gain. So we are changing this stuff. Things are changing. And so with the facts that things are changing, that's where we have to pay attention and work together with each other. Now, the one thing, too, is the one thing I want to make sure people comprehend, the Supreme Court is not above the law. And this is dealing with 28 U.S.C. Code 445. Disqualification of justice, judges, magistrate, judges, subgraphers, and any judge or justice, magistrate, judge, or all United States disqualify himself in a proceeding which his implementary might responsibly be questioned. So we already have these administrative rules, and once people start using these administrative rules and filing on these administrative rules and getting them out. Now, we do have the, the United Constitutional Patriot Group. I'm going to bring up their YouTube, and I want to get this out because we've been working with them on some of these projects, so this way we get more and more education. And these gentlemen are trying to work with you to make sure that you get the truth. Now, some of us do have a difference of opinion. But that's the one thing that you got to remember. Opinions are like jerks or assholes or whatever you want to call them. You know, they are different. And so that is the one thing that when we start working this and start comprehending what the Constitution actually means compared to what we are led to believe. And we are led to believe in a lot of this crazy stuff. I mean, it is really frustrating, you know, especially with elections that are going on right now. And it's really interesting watching these people in these talk shows. You know, I'm for the families. I want to give you rights. I want to protect you. All right, and it's interesting when you don't see any of these fools protecting anybody but themselves. And that is a fact. These fools are out there, you know, sitting there going out there, and we're going to make sure everybody's protected. Okay? Well, we've been listening to that for years. And so because of that one, listening to that for years and this crazy stuff that is going on. United States Constitutional Patriots Radio, and they're doing apparently a live show right now. So it is going to be interesting because, you know, we're trying to do this so we weren't doing live back and forth on each other, but things like this happen. And the thing is that they're getting information out that most of the average general public doesn't have a concept or a clue of what's really going on with the changes. And everybody's getting, you know, let's go after that. I was just talking to a nonprofit yesterday. They are starting, you know, raising funds because of what's going on at the borders. You know, we got foreign countries that plan on flooding us with about 100,000 immigrants in the next several months. And they're trying to do this because they think that this country is open to the world, and they say that they have it harder in their country than what we're living today. Well, I hate to say this to these fools, but in our country today, we're living basically like Nazi Germany. You know? And you think you got it worse in your country? Now, we're trying to save our country for what the last 50 years has been an open border. You know, because there used to be a limit of 50,000 people every several years. You know, if you read the congressional records in history. compared to what people are thinking that, we're supposed to open up the borders, and Obama really flooded this country with about 100 million terrorists because all these people ended up taking jobs. Minimum wage went up to a point where you can't barter with your employer for your job basically anymore. Because when minimum wage, when I used to work, I used to barter my salary. All right, I start for you at minimum wage. So many months, I get a raise, I get a commission. People don't know how to sell themselves anymore. There's so many things that are going automated, and everybody's thinking, oh, this is great, we get in and out. Well, and it's, we forgot what it's like to stop and smell the roses and read what's going on around us. Basically, like even people watching. Have you ever done that? So the thing is that dealing with our elected and public employees, we know that we have two court systems. And so with the two court systems, now we know how we have to maneuver our paperwork. And we're getting more and more information that we're getting up on new.org and Trackers website. We are getting more information on the United States for America Elected and Public Employees Oversights. Recall Kate Brown. Facebook site, and the other one is Civil War, 1866, Lawful Bloodline Americans. And then we have the other site, too, on Facebook is New Oregon Trackers. And so on my main Facebook page, what I had somebody flash me, is like up well over 250, almost 300, 750,000 or 750,000 people have checked my Facebook site out. So I'm not complaining. We do that. I know people are following us. People are paying attention to what we're all doing. And we are being successful. Now, I'm going to get out some information this week because we have a deadline coming up for what they call new Senate bills in the state of Oregon. And if you're in Oregon Territory, we would like to get you to start writing on your race to travel and quote Dexter Johnson's own words, that how a Republican form of government and how the democracy has taken over and destroyed the Constitution. His own words. This is Legislative Council, folks, of Oregon. And it's like, I don't get why people are not comprehending this stuff and why people are not so outrageous. And I get really tired listening to some people, well, I don't have time, and it's like, but then they got time for you to go run around and help them out. And then when you get their stuff straightened out, they forget about you. And we all go through that. I know I've been through that. I know a lot of people I've talked to have been through it too. But my way, in some ways, I look at it that I know some of these people are out there educating others. They got to the point where they're still researching and doing stuff. So some people are working with us. And so sometimes we do get frustrated in what's going on around us. And we get frustrated with this corporation of what they're getting away with. So, and I did get the letter out for the sheriffs. I'm waiting for a couple informations because I have research that stalled me for the last couple of weeks because I'm down to one computer and I was blessed on agreeing on one to keep me going right now. But, right now I'm still fighting on my land stuff. They've been fighting on me with a whole bunch of stuff. So I comprehend what people are going through because I'm living through this hell myself. But, I can sit there and whine and cry, but I'd much rather put the stuff in writing and let it get out there. And it amazes me where people say, well, the public. Well, sometimes you ask yourself, too, where is the public? And that's what we're going through today. Where is the public? Now, we got a lot of people on Facebook and stuff we have connected with. We're sharing stuff. People are starting to do talk shows, trying to keep, I haven't done a deal, but I'm thinking about starting to do a live broadcast because people need to know more of what's going on. I figure a live broadcast will probably help out. So I'm working on a lot of things like that besides this other letter, because with the county commissioners, I'm sort of frustrated because I wanted that out at least a month ago. So I got a lot of research and regrouping, a lot of re-putting together the information. And so that is another thing that, because of circumstances, is taking time. And so, anyhow, this is a frustration that we're living. And it is what we're living today. So we have solutions to these problems. We know the solutions. And so now it's time for us to make sure that that we're following through on what we're doing. Now, the one request we did have last week is dealing with the sheriff's department and the police department. We need their founding information. We need your help, folks. Because once we can start putting this stuff together and make sure that there is no conflict of interest, excuse me, very important that there is no conflict of interest, then that's how we're going to start uniting and taking this stuff back. And that's where the one thing is, people are not trying to comprehend how we are to reunite. We got all these groups, Democratic groups out there that are putting out a whole bunch of mind-interesting garbage, convincing how the system is. I mean, we've got a talk show that I'm bringing back on tomorrow with a gentleman that I've been running on some of his videos for the last 2 months. And I'm trying to get a hold of him personally. I have to agree with some of the stuff that he talks about. He talks about it like he's a lawyer or an attorney or a broker, something to that effect. Because like when we brought the one video in about dealing with your rights, and he's talking about you have a right to counsel. Well, then he brings up, now you need a lawyer. Well, that's a conflicting statement, because that is the one thing that is very crazy. Because either you have a right to counsel or you have a right to a lawyer. A lawyer is not counsel. I don't care what anybody tells you, it's not counsel. And so when we've got these people out there that are doing this, it makes you wonder if they're lawyers, attorneys, what they're doing, how they are protecting their own. And that's what, we're going to run one of his videos tomorrow night. And I'm trying to get the point where people get this point where it comes across dealing with how to protect yourself. And that's the one thing that you have to learn how to do this stuff, protect yourself. So if you're not out there protecting yourself and doing this stuff to protect your bloodline, your family, your circumstances, that's what we're losing today. We are losing this structure today because of things like that. And so when you sit there and want to argue with these things, and, there's a lot of people that want to argue these things, and they're not arguable when it comes down to it. Either it is or it isn't. It's just one of those things. And we are living in a time, that is, so we're living in a time that is very interesting today. Everybody's working on a nonprofit structure. And it's interesting to me that with a nonprofit, well, if we're using our Social Security number, shouldn't we have free mailing? And I've got the laws on that. How come this is not happening? I mean, I've had my local postal office withhold information, not delivering the mail, holding, warrants that were served for months, and then all of a sudden they're back in my mailbox. And so, yes, I've lived through this stuff. And so it's interesting when you talk to people when they try to convince you that you never went through this stuff. Or, life isn't as hard as you think it is. Well, it isn't. Life is not hard. Life is very simple. But the people around us make it difficult for us. And that is the problem we are dealing with today. I mean, that was the one thing that if we didn't have the instruments and the knowledge that we are passing on today, we would be able to create a half a dozen of what the other things we are talking about and what we are creating on these affidavits. And so we do ask people to read what we're putting out there. We ask people to read other stuff. I'm putting together, like I said, a couple more, working on them right now. And the one thing, once these other ones come out, it's going to be an interesting tale because I'm quoting their own administrative rules, including like with private prisons. That is the one thing with private prisons that people don't comprehend, the severity of what a private prison is. These are corporations that are run by your mayor, your city council. And so this is how these men and women are raping and robbing us and pillaging us, by making sure that you are in a private corporation. Now, there are laws that are protecting our public employees. There are laws that protect you from our public employees. And I'm talking laws and administrative codes. And those are in our writings. And we're going to be getting this out with the private prisons coming up. Because people need to comprehend these prisons, your county jails, they're privately run for personal and private corporation gain. They're not there to protect you. Like the Supreme Court has stated, the police department's not there to protect you. And that's in more than one case. And they even got new cases on it. But the one thing is, we do have a recent ruling in 2017 on the rights to travel. But getting people to stand up to it, because a lot of people say, I'd just much rather pay it off. I don't want to deal with it. It's too much headache to deal with it if I have to, fight it. And that's the one thing that is frustrating. Because when you sit there and say you have to fight something, instead of going into that court and billing them for your time, billing them for your labor, because, your time is labor when you go into these kangaroo courts. And that is the point, billing them, but you have to file the criminal charges on these men and women too. And that's where people are not getting this. That, I don't need to file on this. And it's like, yes, you need to file on that. You want the judge to have the evidence which you are claiming, that you are stating the facts to what you're claiming. It's like, it's interesting. I mean, once in a while I watch even the AKA Judge Judy. And it's interesting how she keeps her courtroom and people don't realize, yes, she's running under a corporation TV product. Yes, she is. But they're signing contracts when they go to these courts. Sometimes for their TV appearance, the producers will pay for their court fees and everything. And see, technically, when you go to court, you're supposed to have the same thing. Because you're going to represent the corporation that FDR formed. Woodrow Wilson signed the first opening contract. So we're still dealing with all this crazy stuff. Excuse me, I'm waiting for the computer to catch up because I want to bring up another point. Because then I want to open up the floor, see what people think, and see what people are commenting about, and see how we're getting success on some of these things. And the one thing, it is frustrating, trying to get a corporation judge to do their job. But the one thing is, you have to bring people in the courtroom. when you watch these TV programs with Judge Joe and all this, did you bring in the witness form? Did you bring your witness in? No. Inadmissible. See, they have to do some of the stuff on these programs, the same thing as the Article 3 courts are supposed to be doing. You have to sit there and bring technically anything over $20 is to get a court case. But most people don't sit there and file for their rights either. And a lot of people are learning that. So it is interesting how we're all caught up in this. And how we're all opening our eyes more and more to the truth of what we allegedly grew up into the world that we thought we were growing up into until we got, truthfully, slapped in reality with the real world. And so that's the one beauty about the real world. You start comprehending how to write your paperwork. You start learning more and more how to be what they call an adult. And that is the one thing that, we watch a lot of people around us, we question if they're an adult or still acting like a child, and it's really hard to tell. So then tomorrow night, like I said, we got a couple videos that I set up on the 9th. And this is the one thing that getting more and more of this education out and bringing up the point where when you listen to some of these videos and audios from other men and women and they tell you you have a right, but then again they use a defense for the foreign side of the argument. Either you're right or wrong. Either you have a right and they don't have a defense. See, that is the point. A defense of what he talks about is still in the democratic democracy system of religion. We don't want religion in our courtrooms. We don't want religion in our country. We want men and women that have freedom, that have rights. We want women who have rights. That's like the other argument, the Roe versus Wade. Either the woman has the right to her body or she don't. Or the man has the right to his body or he don't. And so when we start stepping out, either you have a right or you have a privilege. And so that is the one beauty about the lawful bloodline natives. We have rights, not privileges. Native. Prove it. And that is the beauty about it. People are doing that across the country, if you haven't been paying attention or seeing that. People are going back and doing their registry, checking their bloodline, proving their bloodline, going back as far as they can. And so I am glad to see that as a movement that really is moving and really is happening. I have talked to a lot of people over the phone over the last several months and watched a lot of sites and comments from other talk shows and other stuff that is bringing lawful bloodline American Native or lawful bloodline American Native American into the conversation. I was impressed to see a couple of one of the native sites start bringing that up and questioning things. And so that is the point. We are waking up. We are filing the rights. I've been watching people going, yes, I just filed my rights. Yes, I'm doing this. I'm going through the process. And you got to remember that some of these men and women are screaming and hollering because you're elected and public employees the way they've been brought up the last 2 or 3 generations. You have to realize that some of these men and women were not brought up by facts of reality. They were brought up by corporation administrative rules denying you your rights. Or, if you're an immigrant, your privilege is to be in our country. And so that's why when people are panicking and that Trump was bringing down the military to the borders, we have a right to protect our homes. We have a right to protect our children. We have a right to protect our resources. That's our right. That's what the Constitution gave you, a right, not a privilege. And so by him bringing these things out, and a couple people that I'm waiting for some responses because they're shipping people out to the border right now because they're getting ready for this immigration influx that is going to surprise a lot of people. And when the Pope and the priest and all these Vatican people and religious people from other countries, including the Muslims, are going, we have a right to be in your country. We have a right to come in your home and tell you how to live. Sorry to say, you don't have a right coming into our country. You don't have a right telling us how to live. And once you comprehend that you don't have a right in the 48 states, and we have the right to our food resources and to our water and to our land called timber and soil. You know, we do comprehend the oath above land and sea and soil, but the point is that when you get a constitutional oath, and trust me, I've signed a couple, I've been elected a public servant, and that form, when I questioned it, it says support the Constitution, and you read a lot of these judges' oaths and stuff, it says, I will support the Constitution. It doesn't say the Constitution is my God or my prayer or my Lord or, what they're supposed to defend. It says, I will support it. So support means, hey, it works or it don't. So these are the things that, is waking up the community, waking up people around us. Every once in a while we do see a news blip on things that in mainstream media that people are going, huh? But we need more and more of that, and we'll see what happens because, like, a lot of these TV and radio stations have gone down the last few years, and people are waking up to the owners and the propaganda that we've been misled by. And so we are seeing a change, but we can't back off from the change. We have to continue educating those around us and getting them with the knowledge so that way they can defend their families, their structure, their assets, their bloodline. And remember, your bloodline is an asset, is your child, and you own them until they're 18. And that depends on your own contract with your child after they're 18. So we don't look at a lot of these things as structures. It's like people think that, I'm growing food or you're growing food. That's crazy. You have a grocery store. Why are you collecting rainwater? Well, hey, something happens, I got water. You got to be prepared. People call that the aluminum hat society, we're going to panic. And it's like, no, it's being prepared. It's being responsible. Teaching responsibility. Teaching how come we're not educating people. How come in our cities and counties there's no food along the roadways and highways? Or gardens that people don't have a problem with somebody walking by. Some places still do that. But most cities frown on that. And the one thing I guess that the Supreme Court that came out and said dealing with feeding homeless is a constitution right. And so they do have that one right, because you're not supposed to let your fellow man die in front of you. Or a woman, that depends, if they're threatening your life or something like that extreme. But in other words, we're not supposed to sit there and terrorize each other. And we can stop this stuff. It's our responsibility to stop it. And so it is happening. It is taking time. It is a slow procedure. But more and more people are getting together, getting groups together and bringing this stuff together and talking about these stuff. So it's like when we're going through the amendments right now. People need to know when these amendments came in, how they were passed. So I got a few other videos along the way that, I'm going to put together out there because some of the videos maybe you've seen, some of them you haven't seen. And the one thing is, I've got a couple that we're going to start getting back up on the Lighthouse Law Library. because they've been all of a sudden been putting out very good videos, more than they have in the past. A couple new ones I've seen they put out was right on. So with that, I'm going to open up the floor, see if anybody's got any comments, and then we'll go from there.
All participants are unmuted.
Okay. No one's got a thought tonight, huh? Boy, I guess that's quiet.
Ed,
Yes.
you said that they're sending people over to the border?
Yeah. They're going to the border across the country right now to stop immigration coming in because they're expecting 40,000 trying to come across the border.
Wouldn't that be considered an invasion?
Yes. That's why Trump has called the troops out there. You are aware of that, right?
Oh yeah, I was wondering about it because also heard that up in Oregon, Democrats were blocking off streets and
oh yeah, they're protesting like hell because Katie Brown's got an election and she's been funded by the Soros and Hillary Clinton and all this stuff with the immigrants going back to Bill Clinton, who opened up the border dealing with the Bush family.
Also, I heard that, and I don't know how true it is, could be fake news, but I heard that Hillary Clinton is considering running for 2020.
Yep. And I don't know if it's
Really?
fake news or... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was saying, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they don't want the borders closed off. Because that's how the Democrats make their income. Remember, it's like all these feed stops and slave shops in the United States. Most of them are owned by, public employees like, Waters and Pelosi, King in New York City.
I heard that, was it, what's that daggum girl's name? That one that looks like a stick.
Did she work for Hillary or not?
No, I don't know. Anyway, when she won an award, she turned around and she said, "Go out and vote." And was it a couple of days later they said that because she said that, a lot of them have changed from being Democrats to Republicans, and said that they were going to vote different just because she said that. Others said they weren't going to vote either way. So Taylor Swift is who it was, because she brought that up, which I thought was kind of funny because, like I said, to me, I don't think anybody that's in the entertainment business should be giving anybody political views of their own. They should just keep their mouth shut and stay in their own lane.
Yeah, no, a few of them are actually coming out and supporting Trump now.
I haven't
publicly
heard that.
Making it known. You've seen that, haven't you?
No, I've caught a little bit of this news feed here and there, and it was kind of I heard about the 40,000 immigrants that were trying to come over here. They busted through Mexico's gate,
right?
And there were everything. And Trump turned around and said something about either y'all stop these people or I'm cutting off y'all's funding. So they've got them right now in Mexico,
right?
And that's all I know. But the thing is that I didn't hear that the troops were going down there. And then also, I'm wondering, okay, so then what are we going to do about Syria? Is it Syria? I think is the one that supposedly killed that news reporter. and because we're getting our fuel from them, and if they turn around and stop sending us fuel, I don't think we've fracked enough to get enough fuel to.
We don't need to frack.
We
We
got-
already have it.
The corporate, Texas has got a lot. Plus, corporate Alaska is majorly full of oil, so we're fine.
Oh, okay. I wasn't keeping up with.
Well, that's why they put in the pipeline in South Dakota. So that way, that oil came to this country. And then if that's true, what they're trying to do, then that way we cut off the Arab oil line. You know how much that would save us?
Yeah, millions, billions.
Yeah. You know, what they're going to say, oh, you owe us? No, we don't owe you because we've already paid you every time that you pump that oil overseas and stuff. Called commerce. So it was already paid for in transfer notes.
Hey, Ed.
Go ahead.
Are we a republic or democracy since in 1789 they said that we're democracy?
Okay, say that one more time. Let me see if I comprehended the way you said the question.
Are we a republic or democracy since they signed in 1789 that we're a democracy?
Good point. 1789, we're not signed as a democracy. We're a Republican form of government. And when you do some of the research back then, you'll see that most of the people that through Congress, all the way through 40 basically, were from foreign countries that were coming over here and saying they had rights. And a lot of those people were from England. And they were still trying to keep us in the democracy system because that's why in the 8th Amendment you have a right to a trial. Because they didn't want you to have a right to trial because they still wanted people to live in a Christian crusade, because if you don't confess whatever they want you to confess, then we're going to kill you. And with a republic, you have a right to have a defense before you're being basically put to death. But you have to do personal injury and property damage. You can't do this hearsay, what's going on as a democracy. Democracy is based on hearsay because when you go to court, in a real court, you're supposed to be able to present evidence, facts, research, statements with the people that were involved in the circumstances. You can't go to court and say, well, I don't have the paperwork. I don't have this information. I don't have witnesses. Just trust my word. Well, it helps to have some of the other circumstances backing up your word. Do you see where I'm coming from with that?
Yes.
Okay, so in a republic form of government, you have a right to defend yourself. In a democracy, you don't. So you have to look at doing a research when you're doing this research, especially on the Constitution, laws, and administrative rules, comprehending what the law says of the Constitution versus statute codes and administration rules, which you are learning. I know that. And so once you stop arguing in your mind that a Republican gives you right, Republic gives you right, not a Republican, not a democracy or Democrat, because those are all corporation identities that were incorporated to start making income off of yours and I and our others, relatives, blood that's spilt on the soil. Our relatives gave up our life so we had freedom, not privileges of religion or privileges of travel or privileges to fish or eat. Because it really frustrates me, because when I see where, like, the state of Oregon now says that if you don't get a fishing license at 12, we're going to put your kid in jail. And if you don't pay your child support, we're going to take away your family rights to feed yourself. So they're doing this, and that's a democracy. That's what they're doing to to punish you because you're not complying with their religious beliefs or administrative rules. So you can sort of see as you're progressing in your education and you're questioning things, and that's the one thing that, I'm glad to see that you're questioning things and bringing things up, and you are doing your research, and you are doing this, and that is one of those things that makes your mind start getting stronger. And then that way, when people try to sit there and pull the wool over your eyes, you're not going to go for it. And I think you already know part of that, don't you?
Yes.
So what else you thinking?
Nothing really.
Okay, well, at least I'm glad you brought in one tonight. And you've done it a couple times, but that's the whole point. When you get these questions, don't be bashful. Okay. So, Dad has anything else, Dad? Okay, no other response. Anybody else got anything they would like to add? Was I pretty much on the point? I guess I was. So, no comments, no suggestions. So, what are you guys thinking? We'll call it a night, and then we'll get into the Ninth Amendment tomorrow night. So, with that, may the Great Spirit bless you. May the Mother Earth feed and clothe you and look over your family, and may the Creator take care of us all and bless us.
All right. Well, thank you again for listening to the disclaimers by Ed Johnston. Ed's getting more and more to the point. No longer 2 hours ranting and raving, and then ask for the floor to get open. So I think he's actually evolving. That's good. But remember, guys, we are not attorneys, lawyers, or financial advisors, judge, tax expert, or claim to be experts in anything. We're just living men and women who brought out, hey, this is the information we've learned. Go out, research it, and wake the up, okay? All right. Thank you very much. It's Saturday, October 20th, 2018. Ed's counter is 30, and I was really nice to him. And it is currently 5:46 Pacific Standard Time p.m. We'll see you tomorrow for Education with Ed, where we're going to talk about the Ninth Amendment and why it's so difficult to make any more amendments to the Constitution. Thank you very much, and have a good night.